And listen,
you're supposed to move that to Patrick, right?
Right now, well, Patrick's been pretty good too, but Lamar Jackson is really this year's Patrick Mahomes. Let's just put it that way, right? This is a player who you drafted late, and right now he's paying major dividends.
I thought Patrick Mahomes was this year's Patrick Mahomes. Akbar. What do I know? What do I know?
You know, take a look at this one right here, because this is the one that I think is kind of surprising, especially when you think about the fact that he's in the top 5 without all of his wide receivers. He struggled with some health on the wide receiver situation. When he gets everybody back in full play, Carson Wentz is going to be big time, prime time. And you think about, look, the running game and the passing game. You think back to 2017 when he was a top 3 guy. I think he climbs back up in becoming a top 3. In fact, he might just be number 1. Watch out for Carson Wentz.
Number 1?
Number 1. Okay, I'm pushing it a little bit. I'm pushing it a little bit, but he'll finish back up in the top 3.
He's been top 10 in 3 of 4 games so far.
In your draft, only Julio Jones is the one who really has sort of lived up to his draft billing through the first month of the season.
Oh, you know what? Check this out. You know what else?
I don't see.
Oh, I just noticed this. Hold on. This is totally spontaneous. I just noticed.
You just came up with that.
Yeah, bro. Like, our receivers, man, they shred out here in L.A., bro. They're dropping sick numbers, dog. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? You know who's not here, though? Is DeAndre Hopkins. And to be honest,
they don't serve in Texas too often.
They don't really. You know what, the one thing, though, is I don't know where he's going to fit in, because I like all 5 of these players, but the one thing is Nuke Hopkins over the last 2 seasons has finished as a top 2 guy. And I know a lot of people out there might be concerned about him, perhaps. What are we going to do with him? But realize his next 4 games are the Falcons. There's about 100 points. Chiefs, Colts, Raiders. So at some point, DeAndre Hopkins is going to be back in the top 5, so don't worry about it.
And he's been a top 2 wide receiver in each of the last 2 seasons.
Absolutely. Just don't let him throw the ball.
Always. You don't want to throw it. He throws it on the line, but he throws it to the wrong team. I've never heard anyone speak like that.
Yeah, dude, like all the time. You want to come down to Huntington Beach, dude?
Let's get back on task here, because we have some running backs to talk about. And you see the top 5 right here. It's Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, Dalvin Cook, Nick Chubb, and Alvin Kamara. But Akbar, 6 through 10 is when things could get real interesting, you think?
Yeah, it does. But I love the makeup here. First off, you know, you go into my mentions, and there were a lot of people who were saying bad things to me.
Why would we go into your mentions?
I was blowing up Martin. Well, you can't get in there, but I can, and I can read through. Actually, I think you can't read them. But the one guy I'm looking at here is this man here. Excuse me. Go ahead.
But Akbar, 6 through 10 is when things could get real interesting, you think?
Yeah, it does. But I love the makeup here. First off, you know, a reason, right? But the offense has changed, and I think they're putting more focus on stretching the field, which also allows him to do his thing. But he might fall out of the top 10.
Yeah, he's going to rush for 200 this week against Green Bay. You watch.
You think so?
I think so.
Scott Weiland had tons of foresight talking about Zeke. He's half the man he used to be 4 weeks.
Oh, my God.
Oh, look at that.
That's actually good music, Russ.
I will say this. There is a name, there's a face that's missing there that we're used to seeing in the top 10.
Emmett Smith.
Todd Gurley.
Is he
He's not there right now. Look, and one of the things we've seen with Todd Gurley, a lot fewer touches through the first month of the season. In the past, he averaged about 20 to 22 touches per game. That number down to about 15 right now, and really not a major part of the passing game for the Rams. If you take away that last week, he had 11 targets. Really hadn't seen a whole lot of the ball in the passing game, and he thinks as long as this usage continues, Todd Gurley may not be in the top 10 this year.
You guys smell that? I think that was Monday night's matchup, so let's get to it. Bengals and Steelers, that was entering the game, because the Steelers, they played quite well, and some of those players may have decided those Final Fantasy score lines. I know one of them did for me, and he was not on my team, James Conner. Not a big fan of that guy right about now.
Yeah, man, he finally did, well, what James Conner does, and that's score fantasy
points. Didn't I predict that?
You predicted 30. He was at, 26 and a half, so you were close.
Close.
26 and a half, so you were close. Yeah, we're not on camera. I'm giving you a slow golf clap for that one. He had 64% of the offensive snaps in the first 3 weeks. He'd only seen 55%. But I would say this. If you got somebody out there who's needing a running back, I might want to sell high on James Conner right about now.
Are you giving up on him?
Wow. I hope not.
That would mean, yes, I'm giving up on James Conner.
Rankster, your Monday night takeaway?
Well, Deontay Johnson, once again, got into the end zone, his second touchdown in as many games. This is a wonderful pass right here. I think a lot of people who needed like 3 points from Juju, me, Mama Dina, all our friends, listen, we just needed a couple of points. But the thing is, is Deontay Johnson is somebody in this offense who doesn't look like he's going to go away. Perhaps he could be playing that Juju Smith-Schuster role from a couple of years ago. And if you
remember, they came in highly advertised. They were getting pumped up big time, talking about the pass rush and their ability to get to the quarterback and stop him. But look, I look at this game and they really stepped up. They've struggled early, and there were some concerns about this Steelers defense. But you watch T.J. Watt, there's a reason why they got 19 fantasy points in the game. And here's the one thing they do better than any other defense in the league, which I absolutely love, is creating turnovers. So even through the struggles, they were still able to create turnovers. That's not only taught, but it's also something that you just have to have a knack for, and this defense has a knack for it.
Creating turnovers better than the Chicago Bears defense. Talk about that during commercial break. Marcus, how about you? What jumped off the page?
Yesterday on the show, MJD basically was like, Joe Mixon, help!
He begged him.
Apparently, Joe Mixon, he must have DVR'd the show, didn't watch it until after the game, because apparently it didn't happen.
Good.
As part of what was a disappointing night for him, he had 4 catches for 1 yard. I'm not even mad. I'm impressed. Like, that's hard to do. He is playing behind arguably the worst run blocking line in the league in an offense that is trailing consistently and having to throw the football. This is going to be a bad year. You may try to trade him. You're not going to get a whole lot in return.
You weren't mad. You were impressed. Like Ron Burgundy, when Baxter ate the entire wheel of cheese.
I don't speak Spanish.
Just like that. Now, before we turn the page and look ahead to Week 5, let's take a look back at what really made the difference for all you fantasy managers out there. Week 4, 60 seconds, control room. Let's go.
Goes the ball far sideline. It is caught ball. Touchdown, Tampa Bay. Chris Godwin, the main guy on this drive. The bubble screen to the right side. Caught ball by Godwin. Dives to the pylon. It is a touchdown.
He dips outside left. He's going in. Touchdown. What a run. Nick Chubb. Touchdown, Nick Chubb. His second of the day. Here goes Chubb. He's going to go. 20, 15, 10, 5. Touchdown, Nick Chubb. He's got a hat trick.
Brady throws to the back corner of the end zone, and that pass is intercepted.
Hit as he throws. Fumbled and intercepted.
Watson dumps him down at the 8-yard line. Howard, touchdown.
Wentz. Howard goes right. Wentz goes to Howard. He's heading for the touchdown and made it look easy.
Nick Chubb. He's got a hat trick.
Brady throws to the...
So it is time for this week's waiver wire wonder. And after a huge week where he scored not once, but twice in the first 2 touchdowns of his NFL career, I'm wondering, Rank, first of all, what camera I should be looking into. And I'm also wondering how you feel about A.J. Brown right there, because our Steadicam guy was over there and he had a lot of movement going on right now.
But the stage director was right there next to the camera you should have been looking at.
Even Michael Jordan missed his shot. So how do you feel about A.J. Brown?
You missed a wide open one. You know what? The thing with A.J. Brown is that I'm going to say no. This is going to be a hard pass for me.
Not picking him
He's
up.
the phenomenal one for sure. He's a talented guy when he was coming out of college. Really liked his prospects. I'm not a really big believer in this Titans offense. As a matter of fact, he's ran less than 16 routes in 3 of his 4 games. He's had 5 targets or fewer in every game this season. I just can't trust it. I thought this was a good matchup for them going up against the Falcons. I just don't know what to make of this Titans team. I know when they win, you talk about somebody getting into your mentions, the Titan fans are there. Hey, you said we weren't going to be good. And then the last 2 games they lost, they disappeared. And then now they're back. Hey, just be consistent. That's
But
all
I would say he is worth a pickup though, and to stash. I mean, because you look at what he and how he worked against Trufant. That's a talented quarterback. Let's not forget that. I mean, so he might be worth a stash and see how that offense progresses.
Talented cornerback.
Bills.
Do not. That's
elite level.
Okay, Fabs, who was your top target this week when you take a look at that waiver wire?
Darrell Williams. There's no question about it. This kid has looked just phenomenal over the last couple of weeks. And I get it, LaShawn McCoy in the mix there, but over the last 2 games, Darrell Williams lead the Chiefs running backs in fantasy points, in snaps played, and in touches. And until Damian Williams is able to come back from his injury, Darrell Williams needs to be started as a flex moving forward. He's proven that he can be a very productive player, even in a timeshare.
Well, you're talking about flex. Let me flex on you with this one, because I have to be the first one to say I used to be a big hater on Rojo, I think is what you guys call him. Ronald Jones, it was one of those things like in a committee, and I was unsure. After that, of course, epic fail first year, I was just like, I'm not messing with him, as far as talent-wise. But when I look at the way he's getting the shares, you look at this last game, 48% of the shares. And look, I know Barber is supposed to be the #1 guy, but he is moving up. He's running harder than before. There's something about him that's getting better. He pops up on tape, okay, not tape, but on DVR when I watch him. He's looking really, really good. I'm telling you, I'd go out and target him because his numbers are only going to climb.
Yeah, still available. You see, only owning 32%.
Talk about weird
NFL.com leads. You know, with the quarterback,
flex.
Marcus?
I am going with the quarterback. Jacoby Brissett, who very quietly has had a good start to his season, taking over for Andrew Luck, who retired. He's the QB9 right now. And this week he's got a matchup with the Kansas City Chiefs. You expect that's going to be a high-scoring affair. Maybe I'm also a little bit bitter because I sat Jacoby Brissett in place of Case Keenum.
Yeah. I'm with you on that one. I'm with you on that. I'm with you. I feel you. You okay?
Tied for first.
You
Yes.
okay?
10
You're not
passing
okay.
touchdowns.
Really not.
Okay, so if we're going to add those guys, that means we have to make a little space, a little room on the bench because someone's going to get waived and they're going back into that player pool. And Marcus, would you say a few weeks back the pool looks eerily similar to?
It's very oceanic.
Getting a little
It
motion
is.
sickness.
Fabs. Someone's got to go back in the pool. Who you putting back in the pool, man?
You know who's making me feel sick?
Who's that? Uh-oh. Hesitation drop.
I know, Miz, you're going to get mad at me, but Baker Mayfield's been, listen, he's not playable at this point. This is a guy who hasn't scored 16 points in a single game this year.
You better watch out. He might talk about
And
you in his press
since the
conference.
start of last season, I hope he does, no quarterback has thrown more interceptions than Baker Mayfield. His offensive line is a big-time problem. Hey, I got sucked into it, too. I thought he was going to be the big breakout quarterback of 2019. So far, he's not broken anything.
Baker Mayfield, do you give credit to Michael Fabiano for this week's win? Absolutely not. That's probably what he's going to say. And that's what he was talking about in that press conference. He was going with
I'm the new
All right, so I got
Yeah,
somebody I'm about to
exactly.
dump in the pool, and I have to first say this. You know, oftentimes I'm intoxicated by my own fantasy greatness.
Wait, what?
Yes, I'm intoxicated by my own fantasy greatness.
You sound drunk.
I apologize. I did not listen to Marcus Grant when he said last week, put Jared Cook in the pool. I said, no, I'm going to give him a chance. And you know what? I gave him a chance, and he just did me dirty. I'm putting Jared Cook back in the pool. Just look, he's killed my fantasy squad in the expert league. Look, I should be way, way far ahead in this league, but I'm not because Cook has been killing it. And I thought coming into this, he was going to absolutely just be the top tight end for Drew Brees. But you look at the targets from Teddy Bridgewater. 13 targets from Teddy Bridgewater. In his first game with the Raiders, he had 12 targets, almost the same amount in one game. What's my point? Is that he's no longer the tight end in that John Gruden's offense. You look at John Gruden's offense, he loves tight ends. I don't think the same can be said for Sean Payton's offense. It's not the same, especially with Bridgewater.
He's standing to your left. You may want to listen to him.
Right.
Top five.
I apologize.
Rank, how about you?
You know,
going back in the pool.
I'm going to
man.
do this one from long range.
Long range.
Drop a
Ballin'!
Matthew Stafford. We got to put him back in the pool. By the way, did you notice I was a lefty?
Oh, okay.
You know who else is a lefty?
Me, I'm a lefty.
Larry Bird on some games when he got tired.
Clayton Kershaw. Who? Okay, fine. Matthew Stafford has been playing
They
pretty
played
well this
together.
season. As you see right there, he is the #7 quarterback this season. He's been a nice streaming option. Did pretty well against the Chiefs. He's done well this season. The thing is, #1, they're on a bye this week. So there is no reason to keep multiple quarterbacks on your team if you are streaming. That's why if you have Matthew Stafford, you drop him and you pick up Jacoby Brissett, just like Marcus was saying.
You're going with a running back with a legendary handshake.
Yes.
Single leg.
Time for a little Adult Swim. We're going to put a veteran back in the pool. Adrian Peterson. I know last year he exceeded expectations, had a fantastic season in that Washington offense. This year things a little bit different. Washington struggling to stay in ball games, having to throw the football on top of it. Peterson not able to find any room behind that offensive line. If you are bold enough to roster a Washington running back, it should be Chris.
This week's Backfield Report, we've gathered together some of the brightest minds in all fantasy football. We also asked Akbar to join us as well because we're going to put a few backfields under the microscope. And Fabs, there's some committees that jumped off the page to you. I'll let you go first. What do you got?
Man. What happened with the Eagles backfield last week? I mean, we all thought it was going to be the Miles Sanders breakout game. Marcus, it was the Jordan Howard breakout game. Exactly. I mean, in the first 3 weeks, Miles Sanders led this backfield in snaps and in touches. And in week 4, it was Jordan Howard who went in there and just made mincemeat of the Green Bay Packers. So now this week, we really need to keep tabs on what are the snap counts, what are the touch counts, because we could end up looking at a full-blown backfield committee for the rest of this season in Philadelphia.
Okay, Marcus, let's take it right up the street here in Los Angeles. The Chargers, how you feel about that?
Yeah, the Los
committee?
Angeles Chargers of Carson. We saw them last week, and it was heavy Austin Eckler. You see that, the 29 fantasy points there. But Troy Pope stepped in the absence of the injured Justin Jackson, scored himself a touchdown. Melvin Gordon, not pictured here, was wearing a baseball cap pretty much most of the afternoon. But next week, expect to see a lot more Melvin Gordon as he makes his debut for the season. But don't fret, because Austin Eckler will still have some value even with Melvin Gordon on the field. I would expect, at least for that first week, probably more of a 50-50 split with snaps and touches.
Okay, Akbar, before we get to you, we're going to go back to Fabs.
Okay.
Fabs, what do you got?
Yeah, I wonder if we're going to see a changing of the guard here in Tampa Bay. Akbar talked about him earlier. Ronald Jones looked really good. Maybe it was the homecoming, playing in front of Los Angeles, and his crowd used to be a USC Trojan, but this past week, he led the Bucs in snaps and in touches and in fantasy points. Peyton Barber's always going to be there, but I do wonder if Rojo, if picked up off the waiver wire now, he may be a nice flex starter when you get into those heavy bye weeks.
I totally agree, and he is running with authority. Just watch it. Just go back and just watch it. Go get your Game Pass, watch the film, and you look at him, you go like, you know what, I'm confident I got to pick him off the waiver. But let me talk about the Patriots backfield, though. I think historically it's always been an enigma as how Bill Belichick is going to operate his running backs, and that can be confusing. I get it. I'm always befuddled by it. But when you look at not necessarily looking at the fantasy points, but I'm looking at where they're giving opportunities to the running back. And the one thing that pops out to me is red zone touches. That goes to Sony Michel. Sony Michel's always leading that. I tend to believe that the long haul, you want to play Sony Michel. Now, I know James White is getting about 52% of the snaps, and then you get a Bolden. I think that helps no one special by Adam Rank. But look, I think Sony Michel's the guy that you want to key on in this backfield.
All right, let's move from the East Coast and get back out here to Los Angeles, where it's always sunny. Fabs, how you feeling about the Rams back here?
So the bad news was that Gurley had 5 carries. That's just not going to get it done. The good news is that he played 76% of the offensive snaps. Malcolm Brown was only at 24%, and he saw 11 targets, and he only had 6 in his first 3 games. Those are the good things. The bad things are the carries were very limited based on game script, and this doesn't seem to be the same Todd Gurley that we're used to from the last couple of seasons.
Well, week 4, Todd Gurley was a running back 8, and he's running on grass at the lovely Coliseum. But 20 years ago, the Rams offense was nearly unstoppable. Now, in honor of the league's 100th season, we're going to celebrate the NFL's iconic moments, players, and teams, including one of the most innovative and game-changing offenses in the history of the National Football League.
St. Louis, the gateway to the West, is now the gateway to the best football team in the world.
From 99 to 2001, the St. Louis Rams could really show you how it was done. Led the NFL in points per game for 3 seasons straight. Opposing teams, what's there to say? These are the breaks. Hey, the wide receivers had skills, talent, and a lot of speed. Torrey Holt, Isaac Bruce, eyes are keen. Fall asleep, they in the end zone, and it's not a dream. Touchdown celebrating, they doing the bob and weave. 3 MVPs in a row, that type of run was absurd. 2 of them went to Kurt Warner, and Marshall Faulk got the 3rd. They threw for nearly 300 yards per game, that's unheard. A pass-first offense, they let it fly like a bird. For 3 seasons, it's like St. Louis ran the sport. 37-11 record when they passed the torch. 1 Super Bowl 34, they defense held down the fort. The Titans tried, but they were
1 yard short.
Time now for Adam Rank with the offense that outmuscled the Rams week 4. Go, brother.
Thanks, Cole. It's time for Straight Talk, presented by Straight Talk Wireless. And that offense that you were talking about is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I got a lot of questions about this wide receiver core. Which guy can you trust week in and week out? And I'll be honest with you, I was a little bit worried the other day. I'm sitting there wanting Mike Evans to break out and have a big game while Chris Godwin was sitting there scoring a pair of touchdowns. Thankfully, this play happened. There you go, Mike Evans waltzing into the end zone. He didn't get extra points for running it parallel to the goal line, but he was out there getting it done. Chris Godwin has also been a godsend this season, the favorite of a lot of people in fantasy drafts. So you wonder, what are we doing? Is it going to be one guy or the other? Well, when you look at the numbers, the targets are pretty much the same. 34 to 33, Mike Evans in the lead. Now, they both have outlier games where they out-targeted each other, but really, the targets have been pretty even. And I think with an offense this prolific, with Bruce Arians running the show, you can start these guys each and every week. And you know what, Cole? That was some straight talk.
That it was. Good stuff, Rank, as always. Now, as you know, if you watch the program each and every single week, our guy over there, Marcus, with that lovely purple hanky, he posts the things that he learned in fantasy football over at NFL.com/Grant. So, week 4 takeaway. What'd you learn, man?
You can start pretty much everybody against the Falcons defense. I mean, I think if we didn't learn that last week with what the Tennessee Titans offense did against the Falcons defense, then I don't know if we're ever going to learn that lesson. We are to the point where we're talking about, should we be picking up A.J. Brown off waivers? Hey, can we play Marcus Mariota? I think we pumped the brakes on that, but I think it means that this Falcons defense really is vulnerable. It's part of the reason that their offense has started the second half in a 2-score hole in every game this season. So whenever you're trying to target defenses, we've already talked about the Dolphins, we've talked about the Bengals. Add the Atlanta Falcons to that list of defenses you want to target.
What did you learn this week?
And this is me being unbiased. Dak Prescott is not an elite fantasy quarterback yet. He's just not. The first 3 games, he was great. He played the Dolphins, the Giants, and the Redskins. Sorry, guys. Those defenses just aren't very good. In the first big game that the Cowboys have had against a legit team, Dak laid an egg. And this defense was not good against quarterbacks going in. If you're an elite quarterback, week in and week out, you need to go out there and produce, especially against teams that struggle against the pass. Dak could not do that in New Orleans.
That hurts you to say as a fan of the Cowboys, didn't it?
It does.
Okay. Akbar, what do you got for us, man?
Well, look, I talked about my tight ends woe with Jared Cook, but I will talk about this one. I got this one right. Austin Hooper was the right late-round tight end to draft. And let's say, for example, you missed out on a Kelce or an Ertz or a Kittle, and you waited to the 12th round. That's about his ADP band, was the 12th round. And got an Austin Hooper. Now all of a sudden he's balling. You look at the numbers. I mean, it's clear. Like I know that this offense has been up and down, and people have been like, "What's going on with the offense?" But Austin Hooper's been the highlight. He's averaging 17.68 fantasy points per game. He's second amongst tight ends. No one would have ever thought going into week 4 that that's what you would have is the second leading tight end in fantasy points.
Okay. Any of you guys have Patrick Mahomes in your respective fantasy leagues?
I do. Actually,
okay.
yeah.
Well, it's good for you, and it's good for me. And the good news is that even when Patrick Mahomes has bad games, he still has good games.
That sounds like the most interesting man in the world.
It's almost like Rosie Perez, a white man can't jump. Sometimes you win when you really lose, and sometimes you lose when you really win. And Patrick Mahomes goes for over 300 yards in this one, and we saw the nifty little hook and lateral, of course, Travis Kelce and Shady McCoy. And at the end, when all the dust settled, I know it's not fantasy related, but Patrick Mahomes and his Kansas City Chiefs win. So if you're worried about Patrick Mahomes when it comes to those fantasy numbers, do not fret, because next week he'll be right back in the mix. And that's what I learned, that Patrick Mahomes is pretty good, no matter how you slice it. Now, in case you missed this, our guy, NFL Network's Mike Garafolo, reporting that wideout John Ross is expected to miss multiple games with a shoulder injury that he suffered on Monday night. Now, sources say Ross could be in the range of a month or so to get back on the field. So, Fabs, what do you say? Should you pick up Auden Tate if you love the Bengals and their passing attack? I don't think anyone's said that.
I would not do that. If there's a player to pick up this week in Cincinnati, it's Tyler Eifert against the Arizona Cardinals and their awful defense against tight ends. And, you know, this offense, what we saw last week, they love to throw the football. That offensive line is just rotten at this point. So, not trusting Tate.
All right, don't trust him. And when we return, we're going to hopefully have you put your trust in us.
I'm going to go with DJ Chark. I mean, we weren't talking about him in the preseason at all. It was all D.D. Westbrook, right? We were all talking about D.D. Westbrook. And when Nick Foles went down with the injury and we got the magic mustache in the game, well, suddenly DJ Chark became a thing. He has scored a touchdown in every game but one, and last week he had a touchdown called back because of a penalty. But suddenly this guy goes from waiver wire fodder to flex starter, man. So I'm starting to feel a little love for him.
Okay, Akbar, give us a guy that you were like, at the beginning of the season, but now you're like, I feel great about it.
It was Lamar Jackson, and I thought, I don't know, this is probably just going to be one of those running quarterbacks that probably won't pan out. We've seen this happen before with other quarterbacks who are running superstar. But then Lamar hit me up and says, just tell me you didn't love me when you thought I was a running quarterback, and I'll never bother you again. That's a call from Coming to America. You may not remember that. But what I love about what he's doing, 27.5 fantasy points per game. He has shown that he's not only the running quarterback, but he's also the passing quarterback, leading in both categories. I mean, you just can't miss. I'm in love with him now. In fact, I'm going to take him to Zamunda with me.
And I still love you when you're a goat herder, Akbar. Don't worry about that one. Rank, who are you feeling good about this second time around?
You know, Cortland Sutton, coming into the season, I was a big fan of Deshaun Hamilton, and I thought that he was going to be the guy that was going to break out in this Broncos offense. But you know what? It's been Cortland Sutton. He's had at least 7 targets in every game this season, and obviously last week had the big game. And I told Ricky Hollywood to bench him for Paul Richardson, but whatever. We're not talking about old stuff right now. And as long as Joe Flacco is the quarterback, because that's an important point to remember.
Okay.
As long as Joe Flacco remains the quarterback, Cortland Sutton is a really good option.
Okay, Mark, this is the second time around you've fallen in love with a gigantic running back. Sounds a little weird, but that's what it is.
Enormous guy. Oh, yeah, Derrick Henry. This is a guy that, I heard him described as a Costco player, right? He scored his fantasy points in bulk. But here, part of it is that the Titans have actually committed to him at this point, right? He's playing about 60% of the snaps. He's getting pretty much all the touches, 20 touches per game as opposed to about 14 or so. On top of it, he has more receiving yards than Dion Lewis. Dion Lewis has been rendered fairly irrelevant in that offense. So suddenly, Derrick Henry looks a lot more appealing now.
Okay, so love at second sight. That segment wasn't that bad, even though I pretty much butchered the lead in. But either way, time now for so close, yet so far away. Touchdowns that nearly happened for your fantasy team. And Fabs, Marquise Brown almost had this one, and I found out the hard way, man.
Yeah, man. I mean, it was a tough catch, but this one would have got you an additional 7.8 fantasy points. That would have helped, right? Right through the wickets, and unfortunately, he ended up with a bit of a stinker. But this week, he is a very flexible asset, let's put it that way, against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Okay, Adam Thielen, Rank, he's a big fan of what's going on in Minnesota right now, isn't he?
I think he's really enjoying his time with Kirk Cousins in Minnesota. Now, let's watch this play. Cousins drying it. You know what? You're covered, Thielen. Fuller's got you. You weren't going to score a touchdown there anyway. So you know what you love to see? That. Oh, I'm so sorry you didn't get number one, you didn't get fantasy points. Number 2, they didn't score against the Bears. So I love this all the way around.
Can I just say this?
What can you say?
I love the Chicago Bears unis.
Thank you.
Those are awesome.
No, that's not awesome. It's fire, man.
Okay.
Well,
But you know what?
That would mean awesome.
Of the 2 wide receivers on this team, the one I would feel most comfortable about long-term is Adam Thielen.
Okay, Marcus, go.
Yeah, it was not a great game for DeAndre Hopkins. That would have made it a little bit better afterwards. I know Deshaun Watson sort of broke it down and talked about the double moves that he missed on a couple of times. This was one of them. This would have made me feel at least a little bit better about Nuke throwing an interception.
I'd like to see Deshaun play as fine as Randy, since you were talking about all that Zamunga chit-chat. But you can break down your own film, and you can go beyond the box scores with NFL Game Pass. You can catch all the action and replay all the gutsy calls, crazy catches, wild comebacks, not to mention those breakout stars. It's all the action you can handle, and it's all season long, and it's all in one place. That's right, Game Pass. Start your free trial today. Now, still to come right here on the program, all you quarterback streamers, take heed. We're going to give you our pick for the best passing pickups as NFL Fantasy Live.
Touchdown, Kansas City! On this block, into the end zone! Touchdown! Diving catch, touchdown! Tyrell Williams gets intercepted. Hello, Mr. Clowney!
Jones takes the snap. He looks, fires it right. Gallman's got it in for the touchdown.
He fumbled the bubble, threw it again, and Domicon, scoop and store box.
Throws it down the field, Rudolph to Johnson, and the Steelers are having fun playing football.
Fun! It was had by the Steelers playing football last night. Probably not so much by the Bengals. We are having less fun looking at the waiver wire because the pickings are about as thin, well, as a thrift store hosting a Macklemore fan club meeting.
As thin as me?
Sure. Anyway, it's time for Pick Up Pick'em, where we contemplate which players we'd most want to pick up from 4 solid options. Fab, you mentioned earlier that Darrell Williams was your number 1 waiver priority, so we'll take him out of the running back mix here. So out of these 4, which one did you look at?
So Ito, I'm going to pass on. Jeff Wilson, is basically touchdown or bust. I think Jalen Samuels is worth adding. He should probably be owned in your league already. But Naheem Hines, now Marlon Mack missed the end of last week's game, had an ankle. All reports suggest that he's going to be fine, but Hines is worth adding off the waiver wire just in case. And in a game against the Kansas City Chiefs where the Colts could be down, game script could mean what, Marcus? They throw the football in the second half, and when they throw it, Naheem Hines is going to be on the gridiron.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think he is kind of a sneaky play this week. Over to the wide receivers here, Akbar.
Well, you talked about the waiver wires being very thin, and you're right, it is very thin. And so when it's thin like that, you want to look for upside. And I look at a guy like Geronimo Allison, first off, I had this guy on my bench, and then he goes off. That upsets me. But the guy that I'm looking at is Golden Tate. And Golden Tate, why? Because I think he has the ability to be the number 1 wide receiver. And I think you just got to look at the roster for the New York Giants. The other wide receivers receiver that they have is Sterling Sharp. After that, there's no one else really. Now, and clearly Golden Tate is,
Sterling Shepard.
Sterling Shepard.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
sorry. Sterling Shepard. And then, but clearly when you look at this, he's coming off of suspension, so this is great. He gets to get back in with the rookie quarterback. And the rookie quarterback is going to love a veteran wide receiver. I think he could be the number one guy. 90 receptions in 4 of the 5 last season.
I had Sterling Sharp on fantasy teams.
I don't know why I always do that. Sterling Shepard. How many times did he get called Sterling Sharp?
I'm sure it happens a lot. The quarterback position, unlike Uncle Rico and Gardner Minshew won state last week. Marcus Mariota looked great against the Falcons. Matthew Stafford's been playing well this year, but I'm believing in Jameis. This is never going to come back to bite me. There's no way it's possibly going to come back to bite me here. Look, I will tell you what, the last couple of weeks, Jameis Winston, I know one week he did it against a questionable Giants secondary, but last week he went on the road to the Rams and threw for over 380 yards. He's had 7 touchdowns, 2 interceptions in his last 2 games. Shout out to Byron Leftwich, who seems to have him working well.
Yes.
He's getting the ball out quickly. He's getting downfield, so things are looking good.
He's got the Saints this week.
Hey, good call out too to B. Leftwich, man. He's
Great,
doing
man.
it.
Shout out to Byron, all right? Hey, Cole, shout out to you. What you got?
Oh, thank you, Byron Leftwich. He knows how to wear a cap. And speaking of, it's time to put a cap on the week presented by New Era, as we always do. Week 4, of course, rank it's in the books. So there's some standouts there. And, of course, we're hoping for an encore. So you ready to take a look towards week 5 and put a cap on week 4 for us?
Well, let's take a look at some players who were standouts last week who could help you this week. And you know what? I'm going to throw on this Philadelphia. It's tough to wear this. It's hard to wear this cap after the double doink last year, but I'm going to do this as an homage to Jordan Howard for how great he played against the Green Bay Packers on Thursday night. I still love Jordan Howard, and he might as well have been wearing the blue and the orange in this game, the way that he ran through this club like it was the old days.
Like water through a sieve.
And you know what? We've wanted Miles Sanders to break out. I've watched the tape repeatedly, and Miles Sanders looks like a good running back. But you know what? Jordan Howard just looks like an authority back there. Look at the way that he gets through that line. I think that this week he's got another good matchup for them.
How about a defense stood out week 4 and you expect more of the same week 5? You didn't even hesitate.
I'm not going to hesitate. I want to put on the Patriots. The Patriots defense might be the MVP in fantasy this season. They've scored more points. They would be the QB5, the RB5, the wide receiver 4, and the tight end 1. And you know what? They've got some great matchups coming up, too. They play in a division that gives them a ton of great matchups. So this is your defense for the rest of the year.
Give me another running back, if you don't mind.
By the way, the Bears beat the Patriots in Super Bowl 20. I just wanted to stick with the Chicago theme. I'm going to put on the Cardinals and talk a little bit about David Johnson. I still believe that a huge breakout is coming for David Johnson. And even speaking on that, he's been pretty good this season. He's been about 7th amongst running backs this season. And, of course, when Kyler Murray can get on the ball, the ball that was picked off by Jadeveon Clowney, that was intended for David Johnson. Like, that was setting up to be a huge play, but I like using them as a receiver out of the backfield.
That Clowney pick, a case of Houston, we have a problem, as in the Houston Texans no longer have him on their team.
Do they not need him anymore?
Where their problem's at. Now, before week 1, we each picked a non-quarterback, non-elite fantasy player by definition, with the goal, of course, them scoring the most points after 4 weeks. The winner, you see him there, 76 fantasy points. It's Fabs, and he picked Mark Ingram. I have to say that Mark Ingram may be an elite fantasy player. And Fabs, you get the prize. It's a helmet.
A prize?
From your favorite team. Cowboys helmet. How about that?
How about them Cowboys?
How about it? But you said Dak Prescott, not an elite fantasy quarterback.
That's disrespectful.
This is a little too big for me. I feel like
this guy right here is going to end up on top somehow.
All right, we're done with that. All right, so as we roll on, what would a champion do to fix a fantasy team that's off to a slow, maybe even a bad start? Our experts are going to help everyone who struggles out there to put together some wins to save that season. Don't miss it. NFL Fantasy Live, presented by New Era, continues right after this. Akbar. It's because we have advice that may turn your whole season and your entire fantasy squad around. A 180. So, Fabs, for anyone who's sitting there hanging their heads, terrible posture, what advice would you give them right now?
You have terrible posture.
I'm checking my posture right now. I want to make sure I'm sitting up straight here. But I would sell high on some of the week 4 standouts who you don't believe in moving forward. And I hate to say it, but Todd Gurley is one of these guys. I mean, mentioned it early, 5 carries. He just hasn't been the same player. He's not getting the same volume of touches this season as he had in years past. And coming off of a game where he scored a couple of touchdowns, now is the time to try and sell high on him. Unfortunately, my buddy Adam Wainwright's probably listening to this, and I've been trying to sell high on Gurley to him, and he's not going to bite on that now.
Akbar, how about you?
For me, it's if you've been waiting for DK Metcalf to really break out, I think you got to keep him on your bench because I just don't see it coming. You look at the number, it's just not there. 5 points per game from week 3 to 4. It's just not there. Yes, he's close to 10 points per game, but he's just not the guy that I thought he was going to be in this offense. I think he's worth, because he's so talented, he's worth holding on to see if he kind of matures throughout this as the season progresses.
And he can curl 135 15 times, just like you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
Marcus?
I think this is the time to start swinging a deal for David Montgomery. I know we keep banging away on this one, but you look at it. His snaps, his touches, they keep going up week by week. Plus, he's got a favorable